Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Scott Midgley, and I'm the Chief Information Officer with Wellforce. And today we're going to be walking through which AI should your nonprofit actually use, and help you figure that one out. If you ever opened ChatGPT, typed in a question and thought, okay, but is this the actual right tool for my work? You're in exactly the right place. Here's the reality. Most nonprofit staff have dabbled with AI. Maybe you've used the free version of ChatGPT to draft an email or brainstorm a campaign idea. Maybe you've heard colleagues talking about Claude or Gemini and wondered what the difference actually is. And maybe, like a lot of nonprofit leaders, you're quietly asking yourself, what should we really be using and for what? And that's what we're going to answer today. Here's our game plan. We're going to start with why all of this matters, and I promise it's not just going to be a bunch of hype. We'll walk through each of the 4 platforms, look at how they compare handling real nonprofit tasks, talk pricing, including nonprofit discounts, and wrap up with a simple decision matrix. Feel free to drop questions in the chat as we go. We're going to cut through the noise and give you a clear, practical, side-by-side look at the 4 major AI platforms: Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Microsoft Copilot. Not through abstract benchmarks or tech jargon, but through real tasks that reflect the actual work you do every day. Grant narratives, donor communications, board reports, program evaluations. We'll show you how each tool in action, and you can see for yourself where each one shines. Let's be real. Most nonprofit teams are doing the work of twice as many people. AI isn't about replacing anyone. It's about giving your team breathing room. We're seeing organizations save between 5 and 15 hours a week on things like grant drafts, social media, and donor communications. Funders are also starting to notice which organizations are working smarter and more efficiently. The gap between AI adopters and everyone else is widening fast. So let's meet the big 4. Each one of these is built by a different company and has a different personality. Claude is known for its nuanced, high-quality writing. ChatGPT is the Swiss Army knife. It does a little of everything well. Gemini plugs right into Google Workspace, which a lot of nonprofits already use. And Microsoft Copilot is embedded in Office 365. So if your team lives in Word, Excel, and Outlook, it meets you where you are. So let's meet each of them. We're going to start off with Claude by Anthropic. If your nonprofit does any serious writing, grant proposals, impact reports, policy briefs, Claude is the tool that you should know about. Grant writing alone is one of the most time-intensive jobs in the sector. You're navigating lengthy RFPs, strict formatting rules, tight deadlines, and the pressure to tell a compelling story while hitting every funder requirement. Claude was built for exactly this kind of complex, careful work. Here's what makes it different. You may have heard the term context window. In plain language, it just means how much information the AI can hold in its head at once. Claude is one of the largest available. You can paste in an entire 20-page RFP, a full board meeting transcript, and a year's worth of program reports, and Claude's going to remember all of them. That means the narrative stays consistent from the executive summary all the way to the evaluation section. Most AI tools simply can't do it this well. It's also unusually good at tone. It can write a major donor appeal that feels warm and personal, a board report that sounds authoritative, and a volunteer newsletter that's friendly and energetic, and switch between them naturally. For nonprofits where relationship building is everything, that matters. And for organizations handling sensitive information like client data, health records, personal stories, Claude was designed with caution built in. It flags uncertainty rather than making things up, which is critical if you're working under any compliance requirements. One more thing worth highlighting. Claude has native connectors for tools nonprofits actually use: Blackbaud, Candid, and Benevity. No other major AI platform has those built-in integrations. That means Claude can work directly with your donor data and grant research, instead of requiring you to copy and paste everything in manually. There's a free tier that's a good solid point, and the Pro plan is $20 a month usually. Now let me show you what this looks like in practice. We're going to take a real grant RFP and watch Claude work through it. pulling out funder priorities, flagging requirements, drafting narrative language that stays true to the RFP from start to finish. So let's go take a look. All right, let's stop talking about what Claude can do and actually show you. Think about the last grant RFP your team received. 20 pages of requirements, scoring criteria, eligibility rules, priority statements. Just the intake analysis, figuring out whether it's even worth applying, can take a grants manager 2 hours. I have a realistic 20-page RFP from a fictional foundation focused on children's cancer research. I'm going to paste it into Claude along with a description of a fictional nonprofit and ask Claude to do the 2-hour intake analysis in real time. Then we're going to ask it to start writing. Watch how it handles the complexity of the document and how it maintains full context when we move from analysis into drafting without me re-explaining anything. So we've pulled up Claude. I already have the RFP pasted in. I'm going to paste in the description of our team here. And we are going to click enter and let it begin. What's happening here isn't keyword search. Claude is reading the entire document, mapping it against our mission, and forming the same strategic judgment an experienced grants manager would make after an hour or two of intake work. That includes the eligibility criteria, the scoring rubric, the equity integration standard, even the fine print most people skim past. What we asked for is specific. Requirements, alignment points, risk flags, and a go, no-go recommendation. That last piece matters. What we're not asking Claude to summarize the RFP, we're asking it to make a directional call on whether this opportunity is worth our team's time. For a development team that's juggling multiple deadlines, that kind of fast, honest triage is important. Let's see what it gives us. First, let's look at the requirements summary. Notice it's pulled out the key deadlines, the eligibility criteria, and the 2 grant categories. Scannable in 10 seconds. That alone saves your grants manager from rereading a 20-page document every time someone asks a basic question about the opportunity. Down here we have the alignment points. Watch the language Claude is using. It's not generic. It's pulling directly from the Foundation's own priority statements and mapping them to our specific population and program model. That's the kind of funder-mirrored language that signals to a reviewer that you actually read their RFP. Then we move down to the flag. Operating budget threshold. That's a real weakness on a lot of nonprofit proposals, and Claude caught it before we started writing. That's exactly when you want to know about it. And then finally, we get to the go, no-go recommendation. So go and prioritize this one. Clear answer, 1-sentence reason. That's what your ED needs before committing your team to a 6-week writing process. Let's keep going on this. So next what we want to do is we're going to do a strategic narrative draft. So we're going to ask Claude to draft 2 sections, an executive summary and a statement of need for us. Paste that in. I want you to pay close attention to. We didn't repaste the RFP and we didn't redescribe our organization, our population, or our funding ask. Claude is holding all of that context from the first message and using it right now to write the grant-ready prose from scratch. This is what people mean when they talk about Claude's context window. In plain language, it means Claude can hold a very large amount of information in memory at once, and it doesn't lose track of it as the conversation continues. For grant writing specifically, that matters enormously. You're not starting over with each step. You're building on what came before, which is exactly how the actual writing process works. What's being generated right now is a full executive summary and statement of need, both written to the exact page limits specified in the RFP. And what I want you to watch for when this comes through is the language. Claude isn't producing generic grant boilerplate. It's pulling the Foundation's own priority statements and weaving them into the narrative, which is exactly what high-scoring proposals do. Let's take a look. So if we skim back, here's our executive summary. It's one page. It hits the required elements from section 5.1 of the RFP, and it opens with our strongest alignment point, not a generic mission statement. That's intentional. Readers read hundreds of proposals, and they decide in the first paragraph whether yours is worth their full attention. Now scroll down to the statement of need. Notice what Claude is doing here. It's not just specific describing childhood cancer statistics. It's connecting the data to the foundation's specific equity integration priority. It's using their language back to them. That's exactly what high-scoring proposals do. They show the reviewer, in the funder's own words, that this applicant gets what we care about. But I want to be honest about something. This is not a finished proposal. Your grants manager is going to edit this, adding real program outcomes, community stories, your organization's voice. But they're editing a strong, funder-aligned first draft instead of just staring at a blank page. That shift, from drafting to editing, is where Claude gives you your real time back. And that's the case for Claude. If there's one tool on this list your team has probably already tried, it's ChatGPT. And that familiarity is actually a real strategic advantage. When you're rolling out AI across an organization, the biggest barrier usually isn't the technology, it's resistance to learning something new. ChatGPT shortens that curve dramatically because many staff have already touched it. That means faster adoption, less training, and more people actually using it day to day. Where ChatGPT really shines is speed and creative versatility. Need 5 versions of a fundraising email for an A/B test? 2 minutes. 20 Giving Tuesday campaign ideas before a staff meeting? Done. For communications and marketing teams that need to move fast and iterate quickly, it's genuinely in a class of its own. One of the most underutilized features is the custom GPT builder, and this is a big deal for nonprofits. You can create a version of ChatGPT that's preloaded with your organization's brand voice, communication templates, and program descriptions. Any staff member can open it and get outputs that are already sound like your organization, even if they've never used AI before. It's like onboarding a communications assistant who already knows everything about you. It also has built-in image generation, useful for social graphics, event flyers, and presentation visuals when you don't have a designer on staff. ChatGPT isn't the tool you'd reach for on a 6-figure grant narrative, but it's the tool your program coordinator will actually open every morning. And for a lot of organizations, that daily usability is more valuable than peak performance on rare tasks. If you're just starting your AI journey, or you need a broad staff adoption fast, ChatGPT is the safest starting point. So now I'm going to show you how this works in practice. We're going to use the custom GPT builder to set up a version of ChatGPT loaded with a fictional nonprofit's brand voice, and then watch it produce on-brand communications content in real time. Okay, we're going to start out with a few rough notes that we've got here about a youth program. And in about 5 minutes, we're going to turn them into everything a small nonprofit communications team might need to run a full campaign. And we're going to start off where a lot of us start. It's just the information. We haven't shaped it into a story yet. These are the kind of notes that might be sitting in your inbox or in a grant file somewhere. But let's watch what happens when we hand it off to ChatGPT. We're going to put our prompt in with these notes. And notice that we didn't write a detailed brief or anything like that. It's just the raw notes on there. And ChatGPT is going to do structural and narrative work on its own. It'll infer the audience, tone, and purpose without being told what to do. All right, look at that opening. It found a human angle that we never provided. It's a child, a future, a community. That emotional hook wasn't in our notes, but ChatGPT inferred it because that's what the donor appeal needs. Scroll down to the close, and you'll see it turn our vague need funding note into a specific ask with real urgency. And the whole thing reads warm and persuasive. It's not like bullet points that get dressed up into sentences. Could your team actually have done this? Of course they could have. They're all very talented people Would it have taken longer than 10 seconds? Absolutely. So now what we want to do is take this same information that we have here and we want to repurpose this into a social media post. And we want to do it for LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Most nonprofits don't have a dedicated marketing team, so maybe one or two people that are wearing like 5 hats. And the real time cost isn't writing the email, it's starting over for every channel. This prompt eliminates that. It's the same content, 3 different formats, 0 rework. And notice how each post has a completely different feel, even though they all came from the same source material. LinkedIn is polished and professional. Instagram leads with emotion and brevity, and Facebook leans into community and shareability. It's also likely added the hashtags and calls to action that are easy to forget when you're drafting. And here's something worth pointing out. ChatGPT didn't need to be rebriefed on the program. It carried that context forward from the first prompt. That's 45 minutes to an hour of platform switching work. Just done. Okay, so now what we want to do is shift again and do a little bit of creative or strategic brainstorming on here. So we'll take a look at this one. We're going to pop this in. Just create the 3-month funding strategy, fundraising strategy to help us expand. And it's not just about content creation. It's actually thinking with us. It's helping development directors in your team, usually that spend hours on these things. We're going to try and save them time. We're going to see that draft, and here we go. Look at what it built out. It probably included things like Giving Tuesday timing, peer-to-peer campaigns, or local corporate matching that your team might not have had on top of mind. And the structure makes sense. There's awareness first, then engagement, then the ask. That's sound fundraising logic. Now, this isn't a finished plan, and that's actually the point. Any good AI output is something that you can react to and refine with your team's expertise and experience. It's not a document that you want to just hand in. But as a starting framework for a planning meeting, how many of you have a board meeting coming up where you might need something to show on paper? This gets you to draft 1 before that meeting ends. And think of it less like a search engine and more like a brainstorming partner who did their homework. Now we want to go ahead and turn this data that we have here, we're going to turn this into a donor story. So I've got some extra data that we have written down here. Tells us the students, volunteer, the things that we want to do with that. And we're going to add our prompt that has the ask in it. Okay, so given that data that we have there, now we're asking it to turn it into an actual impact story, and we just gave it the parameters of 2 to 3 paragraphs. And this is one of the most common pain points we hear from nonprofit communicators. They have real outcomes, real numbers, real proof of impact, but it lives in a spreadsheet or a program report that donors never read. The data is good, it just needs someone to translate it. And so here we go. We've got our ask here. The metrics are all still there. We've got our 78%, our 24 hours, or 2,400 hours, our 150 students. But now they're anchored to meaning instead of just floating in a table. It probably opened with a person or a moment rather than a statistic, and that's intentional storytelling structure. A donor reading this in a newsletter doesn't feel like they're reviewing a program report. They feel like they're actually part of something. And practically speaking, this could go into a MailChimp template or a grant narrative with maybe 10 minutes of light editing versus 45 minutes from starting from scratch. Now our final piece that we want to do here is we want to create something for a board update, which I know many of you actually have that experience with. So, put this final thing in here. Executive directors prep for board meetings on top of everything else they manage. This takes that off the list in about 10 seconds. And there you go. So in about 6 minutes From a handful of bullet points and some data, ChatGPT helped us produce a donor email, 3-platform social campaign, a fundraising strategy, an impact story, and a board update. Now, ChatGPT definitely doesn't replace your mission, your relationships, or your judgment. What it does is give a 2-person communication team the output capacity of a much larger staff, so your people can spend more time on the work that actually requires them. If your organization runs on Google Workspace, and most small and mid-sized nonprofits have at least experienced it, because it's free for up to 2,000 users through Google for Nonprofits, then Gemini is your strongest AI starting point. The number one reason AI fails inside organizations is friction. People won't open a separate tool, copy their work in, and paste it back. Gemini eliminates that entirely because it's already inside of Gmail, Docs, Sheets, Slides, and Drive. Your team doesn't have to change how they work. AI just shows up where they are and goes and helps them. Think about how much time your staff spends in email every week. Gemini inside Gmail drafts responses, summarizes long threads, and helps manage donor and funder relationships directly in the inbox. For a development director juggling 30 funder relationships, that shifts quickly from nice to have to I need that now. 2 features worth highlighting specifically: deep research, which generates cited, structured research reports in minutes, powerful for funder prospecting and grant and program development, and Notebook LM, which lets you upload your own documents, annual reports, grant narratives, board minutes, and actually converse with them. It can even produce an audio summary your staff can listen to on their commute. And if your team is on Google Meet, Gemini automatically generates meeting summaries and action items. The notes are in your inbox before the call ends. For any nonprofit already on Google Workspace, Gemini is the clearest path to adoption without adding anything new to your tech stack. Let's go and see what Gemini can do with just a little bit of raw data. Alright, so what you're looking at right now is an image of a piece of paper that I hastily scribbled down some notes on. So let's not mind my penmanship so much. We have no marketing team. There's no copywriter available to me. Just this piece of paper. Snapped a picture of it, used my phone, uploaded it in. Now I'm ready to go. What I'm looking to do is to show you how quickly Gemini would be able to take this raw information and turn it into something that's donor ready. Alright, so we pasted that in there. It's just those bullet points you saw on the notepad. There's no polish, no complete sentences. And that's intentional, because I want to show you that you don't need to have your story perfectly figured out before you start. Gemini will help you find the story inside the facts. Paste this in. Notice I'm not writing an essay to explain myself. The prompt that I just had in there is short and direct. Clear, specific instructions. We're going to ask those notes I had to be turned into a short grant proposal. I'm not telling it what tone to use, how long to make it, or what to emphasize. I want to show you what it does on its own first. While this is generating, notice what's happening. Gemini is reading the 5 bullet points and making decisions. What's the need? Who's affected? What's being asked for? It's essentially doing the first draft for you in under 10 seconds. Now that it's done, we can take a look and see what we've got. It's got a full proposal structure, organization overview, statement of need, project description, impact section. Did it get everything perfect? Probably not. But to get to 80% of the way in 10 seconds, that's a time saver. And that last 20% is where your team's expertise comes in. Now let's start building on things here. We're going to layer on something that foundations consistently ask for. The mission statement and measurable outcomes. Notice I didn't start over. I'm building on top of what we already have. This is called a conversation. Gemini remembers everything we've done so far. And then one thing I want to highlight here is the word measurable. I put that in the prompt deliberately. If I just asked for outcomes, I might get vague, feel-good statements. By asking for measurable outcomes, I'm telling the AI to give me numbers, time frames, and tracking methods, the things funders actually want to see. So see how each outcome has a specific target, a timeline, and a way to track it? That's grant-ready language. That's what separates a proposal that gets read from one that gets filed away. Now we're shifting audiences entirely. A foundation wants data and outcomes. A donor newsletter reader wants to feel something. Same organization, same facts, completely different communications goal. So let's paste this in. This is one of the most powerful things that Gemini can do for a small nonprofit. Take one set of information and reformat it for multiple audiences without you having to start from scratch. Think about how long it would take you and your team to write a grant proposal and a newsletter and a speech. We're going to do all three of these in under 10 minutes. Notice the shift in the language. It's warmer, more narrative. It's leading with people, not programs. That's exactly what donor communications should do. And now, our last transformation, and this is my favorite one to do in a demo. We're going from written context to spoken word. These are fundamentally different formats. Written content can be complex. Spoken word needs to be punchy, emotional, and memorable. So what we're going to do is put in our prompt and ask for this. A 60-second speech is roughly 130 to 150 words. It has to open with a hook, establish urgency, make a clear ask, and close with emotion. That's a lot to pack in. Watch how Gemini restructures everything we've built to fit to that container. Let's all read through this for a second. There's short sentences, active verbs, a direct ask, a close that lands emotionally. This is ready to deliver. Maybe some personal tweaks to add to make it sound like you. And that's the point. Gemini is not going to replace your voice. It gives you a strong first draft so that your energy can go into personalizing and delivering, not just staring at a blank page. So in the last 10 minutes, starting from 5 bullet points on a notepad, we built a grant proposal, a mission statement with measurable outcomes, a donor newsletter, and a fundraising speech, all from the same raw material. Imagine what your team would do with that time back. And that's what Gemini or any AI can be for nonprofits. Not a replacement for your mission, but a multiplier of your capacity. If your organization runs on Microsoft 365, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and Teams, then Copilot is the most natural place to start your AI journey. Just like Gemini for Google Workspace users, the core advantage here is zero friction. There's no new interface to learn, no separate tool to open. For staff who've been using Microsoft Office for 20 years, AI just shows up inside the tools they already know. For nonprofit finance teams, often one person managing budgets, grant tracking, and board reporting in Excel, Copilot is a serious time saver. It can take raw financial data, build visualizations, identify trends, and generate narrative summaries. During audit season or grant reporting cycles, that kind of acceleration matters enormously. Development staff will appreciate Copilot and PowerPoint. You can start with a few bullet points about a program or campaign and get a complete, formatted slide deck in 2 minutes instead of 2 hours. It won't be perfect on the first pass, but having a full draft to refine changes how you spend your time under deadlines. For organizations with compliance requirements, healthcare nonprofits, groups handling student data, or anyone working with government contracts, Copilot is in a category by itself. HIPAA, FERPA, SOC 2. Microsoft has spent decades building that security infrastructure, and Copilot inherits all of it. If your board or legal counsel has questions about AI and data security, this is the answer that they'll probably be most comfortable with. And Microsoft offers significant nonprofit discounts. Many of you may have already enrolled in their nonprofit program, which means Copilot could be closer to reach than you think. But let's go ahead and see this in action. We'll walk through the common Office 365 apps that we use, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, and see how Copilot can supercharge them. Okay, now we're going to follow the life cycle of a donor engagement campaign from start to finish, using a fictional organization called Bright Futures Foundation. We'll move through 4 Microsoft 365 tools you already use, Excel, PowerPoint, Word, and Outlook, and use Copilot inside each one to do the work that would normally take hours. On our spreadsheet here, we've got a few years of donor history, gifts, amounts, donor types, and whether they came back the following year. This is normally going to take some time to analyze, but let's see what Copilot can do for us in just a few seconds. Let's grab our first prompt. Start it. Copilot's going to read the entire data set, not just totals, but patterns over time. And then we'll watch how it structures the output. While it's working, think about what this prompt actually asked for. A year-over-year giving summary, a ranked donor list, a retention rate calculation, and trend identification. That's 4 separate analyses in one request. Normally, you'd be building pivot tables, writing countif formulas, and cross-referencing columns manually. For most teams, that's at least a 30-minute task, and that's if you're comfortable in Excel. With Copilot, you describe what you need in plain language. No formulas, no data wrangling. It works the same way whether you're a seasoned analyst or an executive director who only opens Excel a few times a month. Alright, so in less than a minute, we have a year-over-year summary, a ranked donor list, and a retention snapshot. This could take you at least 45 minutes in pivot tables. Now that we have the analysis, let's make it visual. We'll ask Copilot to build us a chart that's ready to drop into a board report. So we'll grab our next prompt. We'll post that in here for our chart. Copilot will continue pulling from the same data set and build the chart directly. No need to highlight a range, insert a chart type, or manually label anything. It'll interpret the intent of the prompt and make design decisions on your behalf. For teams that spend time on formatting and presentation, this is going to save time. So now we can look at our chart. This chart is board ready in under a minute. We can paste it directly into a report, a grant application, or a PowerPoint deck, which is exactly what we're going to do later. Okay, now we're going to switch over to Word. We want to document our flagship program, the kind of narrative that goes into grant applications, annual reports, and donor communications. So we'll go ahead and grab our prompt, pop it into Copilot, let it run. Now, to go ahead and look at how specific this prompt is. We give Copilot the program name, the audience, the services, the tone, and the purpose. The more context you give it, the more useful the output. This mirrors how you'd brief a grant writer or communication staff member. You're not just typing a topic, you're giving it a brief. This kind of document typically takes a program officer or grant writer several hours across multiple drafts. Copilot is going to have this thing done in less than a minute. And here we go. So what we're going to want to do with this now, so that we can actually read it easier and create it into something that we want to work with, is we're actually going to just click this prompt here, send that there, and it'll actually create a downloadable link for us. And it'll format it to where we need it to be. And here is our generated Word document. This is a solid first draft. We'd refine it with real outcome data and organizational voice, but structurally it's there. The mission, the population, the services, outcomes, call to action. Now here's where it gets really powerful. We're going to take this document, hand it directly to Copilot and PowerPoint, and build a full donor presentation from it. Alright, now that we have our program narrative in Word, let's go ahead and ask Copilot to turn it into a 5-slide presentation with structure, talking points, and visual suggestions built in. Let's get over to PowerPoint. Open this up. Let's grab our prompt. Apply our prompt. Let it run. Copilot is pulling the content directly from the Word document we just created and restructuring it for a presentation format. Different purpose, different structure, same source material. This is one of the most powerful things about Copilot working across Microsoft 365. Your content doesn't live in silos. A document you wrote for one purpose can be repurposed for another in seconds. Also notice we asked for speaker notes on every slide. That means whoever presents this, a board member, an executive director, or a development officer. All right, so here's our PowerPoint presentation. We've got 5 slides, speaker notes, logical narrative flow, done. If we had a branded template applied, the design would automatically match our colors and fonts. We can drop in real impact stats, hand this to a board member, and they're ready to present tonight. Now we have everything we need to close the loop. The data, the story, the presentation. The last piece is getting it in front of our donors directly. Let's head over to Outlook and draft an email. Okay, last step. We're going to put all of this to work by drafting a donor stewardship email. We want to thank our donors, share impact, and set up our next ask. So we'll paste in our final prompt. Notice the level of detail in this prompt. Specific impact story, a real data point, a concrete event invite, and a tone direction. You can think of Copilot like a talented communication staff member. The more context you give it, the better the output. And just like a staff member, you can ask it to revise, adjust the tone, make it shorter, or punch up a specific section after you see the first draft. And here we go. This is ready to personalize with a donor's name, using mail merge, or send as is to a segment. What used to take a communications coordinator an hour across multiple drafts, done in under a minute. And notice it didn't feel like a robot wrote it. That tone direction in the prompt, personal, grateful, inspiring, not salesy, that's what separates a generic output from something your donors will actually respond to. So in less than 10 minutes, we use Microsoft Copilot across Excel, Word, PowerPoint, and Outlook, and we analyzed donor trends and surface retention insights from raw data. We created a board-ready giving growth chart, drafted a full program description for grant and donor use, we built a 5-slide impact presentation with speaker notes, and then a compelling stewardship email. The time savings alone are significant, but the bigger shift is what your team can do with that time. Instead of formatting spreadsheets and drafting emails from scratch, your development staff is building relationships, making thank you calls, and thinking strategically. Copilot doesn't replace your team, it gives them more bandwidth to do the work that actually moves the mission forward. Here's where it gets really practical. This is a task-based comparison, not just features, but how well each tool handles the actual work nonprofits do every day. No single platform wins everywhere. Claude is the grant writing champion. Copilot dominates if you're already in Microsoft's ecosystem. ChatGPT is the most well-rounded. And Gemini shines when you're deep in the Google Workspace. The right answer depends on the team, what your team actually does most. Let's talk about investment, because I know that's a critical factor in any technology decision. Every platform we've discussed offers a free tier, so you can evaluate before you commit any budget. Paid plans generally start in the $20 per user per month range at commercial pricing, though the nonprofit landscape has shifted meaningfully and in your favor. Microsoft offers a 15% discount on Copilot, bringing it to approximately $25.50 per user per month. Smaller organizations on Microsoft 365 business plans may also qualify for Copilot Business, a tier purpose-built for organizations under 300 users, and that's usually around $20 to $21 per user per month. Also worth noting, Microsoft's pricing is scheduled to increase in July as they bundle additional AI and security capabilities into their core plans. So if your organization is evaluating Copilot, now is a smart time to have that conversation with your Microsoft partner or licensing representative. OpenAI has also moved aggressively on nonprofit pricing. As of early 2026, eligible nonprofits can access up to 75% off ChatGPT Business or Enterprise, a significant change from where they were even a year ago. Google has non-profit pathways as well, primarily through Google for Nonprofits, though Gemini's AI pricing discount structure is less dramatic given that many nonprofits are already on a subsidized workspace plan. The bottom line for your leadership team: the access question is largely solved. The real investment is staff time. Building the workflows, training your team, being intentional about where AI actually moves the needle for your mission. We're going to share links to all the nonprofit application pages at the end of the session. Which one is right for your organization? Well, the best AI platform is the one your team will actually use. Each one has a clear lane where it outperforms the others. Again, Claude is the grant writer, ChatGPT is the creative engine, Gemini is the Google native assistant, and Copilot is your Microsoft infrastructure partner. The good news for you is that you don't have to pick blindly. You already know your organization, your workflows, and your team better than anyone. And that knowledge is exactly what should drive this decision. And honestly, if you're not sure, you could pick 2 or 3, use the free tiers for a while and see what sticks. You don't have to commit to one forever. So let's review. First, there's no universal winner. The right tool depends on your team, your workflow, and your tech stack. Second, you can try all of them for free, so there's really no reason not to start experimenting and see if you like one better. Third, don't overlook the nonprofit discounts. And finally, remember, AI is amazing at first drafts and data tasks, but it's your team that brings the mission, empathy, and relationships. AI handles the busy work so you can focus on what really matters. Okay, so before we wrap up, I want to share something we put together specifically for everyone on this call. What you saw in this demo is just one slice of what's possible. And I know the natural next question is, that's great, but where would we actually start? Every organization is different. Different tools, different team sizes, different budgets, different pain points. So we created something to answer that question directly. Wellforce is offering AI stack reviews exclusively to webinar attendees. It's a 45-minute call with our team where we sit down and look at your specific situation. What tools you're already paying for, how your team is structured, where your time is actually going, and what your budget realistically allows. No generic advice, no one-size-fits-all recommendations. After the call, we send you 2 things. First, a concrete recommendation on exactly which AI platform makes sense for your organization and what order to adopt them and how to access nonprofit pricing. Because there is real money to be saved that most organizations don't even know about. Second, a customized strategy roadmap that allows you and shows you where AI can create the biggest time and cost savings for your specific workflows with a phased action plan you can start executing right away. This is the kind of strategic work we typically charge $1,999 for. For everyone on this webinar today, we're offering it at $749, a savings of $1,250. If you've been nodding along all day today thinking, we need to do something about this, this is the next step. We'll drop links in the chat. And that brings us to the end of our session today. I want to thank all of you for your time. The work your organizations do matters, and if AI can free up even a few hours a week for your staff to focus on mission-critical work, this conversation was worth having. We're happy to take questions now. We'll go ahead and drop them in the chat, and we'll work through as many as we can. And if something comes up after today, whether it's a question about a specific platform, figuring out where to start, or just wanting a second opinion on what makes sense for your organization, reach out to us directly. You can email us at info@wellforceit.com or visit us at wellforceit.com. We work with nonprofits every day on exactly these kinds of decisions, and we're always glad to help. Thanks again for joining us.